We're actually doing a Advent sermon series called "A Weary World Rejoices." And what is humorously sad to me about this is that we're not the only ones doing this series. Apparently, there are a lot of churches that are doing "A Weary World Rejoices," and I think it's because we collectively feel pretty weary during this time. I don't know if any of you have seen the documentary Game Changers or have seen a strong man or woman competition, but there's actually an event called the Yoke Walk. And what they do is they strap 1,500 pounds on their neck or shoulders, and they have 30 seconds just to walk 13 feet. I mean, 13 feet would ordinarily take us like 3, 4 seconds as New Yorkers walking in the city, but they have 30 seconds to walk, and every step they take is just so heavy laden because of all the weight that they're carrying. And I feel like even though we're not carrying this kind of physical weight, there is a emotional, mental, spiritual, existential weight that we've all been carrying from navigating our respective ministries through pandemic, through racial justice, through politics. For our church, we just had our anniversary service, and now we have a Christmas service coming up, and we have to cast an exciting, salivating vision for 2021. And I'm not even talking about personal stuff, right? I have two young girls, and as a parent with two young kids, it's been a pretty rough time. In addition to the fact I just submitted a 268-page paper for my DMin last week, and so I felt like I was carrying another 268-pound backpack on my shoulders with all these deadlines that I had to meet. And so it's been pretty tough. But I think if someone were to ask me, "Do you still want to do this?" My answer would still be an emphatic yes. And I was listening to a Steve Brown interview yesterday, and if you don't know who he is, he's been in ministry for a long time. He's got to be in his 80s by now, and he uh, he sort of sarcastically said, "God, you're the only one. You're the only reason why I'm still in ministry, and sometimes I don't even know if I want to do it for you." And so hopefully we're all of us are still at the point where we still want to do this as difficult as it is. And so I just want to talk about two things that personally that I've been thinking about during this time. And the first is just leading ourselves well. And the second is leading our staffs well. Or another way of phrasing it is leading ourselves as individuals well and leading our systems well. And the reason why I kind of want to talk about this is because, in addition to all the things that I think that have grieved our hearts, I think one thing that has grieved me as a minister is just seeing our fellow colleagues drop like flies during the quarantine, and from people that I know personally to more celebrity pastors and ministry leaders that I don't know to even one of my own personal heroes, and that has just been devastating. And when I hear another story of a fellow colleague that has sort of fallen, my maybe earlier on in my life I would have just shaken my head, but I mean, I think I'm at the point in my life where it's more just sadness, sadness for them and the self-destruction that they've inflicted on their lives, in addition to, depending on how big their platform is, I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of lives that have also been sabotaged as a result of this. And that, I think personally, that's just very grieving to see. And I think that's sort of why I want to talk about the importance of leading ourselves. And I'm not saying anything new. I know that all of you guys already know this, but I think one of the other thoughts that comes into my mind is this is not just for the high profile people. This applies to even the small town pastor serving in rural obscure America that nobody really knows of. And so this is certainly, if it could happen to people that are twice as 3, 4, 5 times as gifted and godlier than me, it can certainly happen to me too. And so just want to think about that for a little bit, because we can never be reminded enough about that. And I think one of the things that sort of stands out when you take a look at, sort of, if you were to do sort of a case study on all these different scenarios, whether it's regarding infidelity or greed or bullying, that all of them sort of revolve around this idea of power, and the misuse of power in particular. And regardless of what role or title you might have right now, we all have power. Even a newborn baby has power. They have the power to change the entire mood of the house. They have the power to ruin their parents' day. They have the power to sort of make sure or make their parents' day even better. And so all of us have power in one way or another. And when you take a look at Genesis in particular, the reason why we have power is because we're made in the image of a very powerful God. And when you take a look at Genesis, God gives Adam and Eve power. He gives them power to name the creatures. He gives them power to fill the earth and subdue it, to have dominion over the earth. But one thing he does not give them power to do is to have dominion over one another. And we see the worst manifestations of that in human culture with things like slavery, but we also see it within churches and ministries as well, where there's this abuse of power. And when you think about the gospel, I mean, what is it? It is an all-powerful God who purposely limits his power, becomes small, weak, vulnerable, able to be killed to death, and he gives up his divine prerogatives for us. And when we see someone who does that, not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. It has to reorient how we understand power as ministry leaders. Jesus didn't come to Jesus came to feed sheep, right? He didn't come to feed on the sheep. And there's a big difference between the two. And I feel like when we sort of get our priorities out of whack, we confuse feeding the sheep for feeding on the sheep. And I think knowing my personal sinful self and my narcissistic self, my self-entitled self, I personally have to do tangible things to reorient my understanding of power to make it more gospel focused. So I'll give you an example of something that I used to do when we were meeting face to face at our previous venue. So the previous venue that we were meeting at was a dance studio, and there were two bathrooms in the back. And I don't, this might be TMI, but I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but every time I would walk into the bathroom at church, I would be abruptly halted by a sour smell of urine. It would just hit me in the face. And I would think to myself, this is awful. Like, I don't want to use the bathroom. And the floor was littered with toilet paper. The toilet always had stains all over the place. And so I made it, a priority every single Sunday to clean the toilet. It and it was a tangible reminder to me that as I was doing it in my suit, it was a tangible reminder to me that uh, this is not. There should never be something that is too beneath me for me to do. The moment when things become too beneath me to do is the moment that I forget that I have come to serve. I have not come to be served. And that sort of narcissism and entitlement is something that can creep on all of us very, very easily. And so doing tangible things to sort of restructure the way I understand a sense of power, because power is such a dangerous thing, particularly if you have a lot of it. And so individually, just thinking about that, and then also just how to lead our staffs well. In almost every case where there is some kind of fallout, the word toxic is used in terms of culture, the culture of this church, the staff culture. It's toxic, it's unhealthy, and it's really important for us not to only lead ourselves well, but to lead our staff well as well. And so one of the things that we're doing at the end of the month is an exercise from my wife's company that we're borrowing called Whoop. It just stands for the acronym is WOOP, and it stands for wishes, outcomes, obstacles, and plans. So what do you, and this is all short-term stuff like for 2021. So what do you wish? Do you wish to have a longer vacation because of everything that you went through? Do you wish to have a higher title? What do you wish for in this upcoming year? What are some outcomes that you'd like to see as a result of those wishes? What are some obstacles that get in the way? And typically they're internal, not external obstacles. And then what are some plans that we can do to help you reach fruition of those wishes? Because if you write down your goals, you're 40% more likely to achieve those goals. And this exercise helps, at least the staff at our church know that, hey, this is not just about, we're not here to build Aaron's kingdom. He is actually here to help us as well individually thrive. And that's so important for our staffs to know. I mean, I think Drew is better than anyone at that, to be honest. I mean, using power in such a way to empower other people. I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for Drew sharing, his power with me. And so using that power to really empower our staff, to help our own ministries flourish, and maybe for them to even go do their own thing for the sake of the kingdom, because we need a giant ecosystem to reach our city. So just thinking about those different things, leading ourselves well, and leading our staffs well, and using the power that God has given to each and every one of us, whether it's leading down, leading to the side, leading up, in such a way where there's health and flourishing in our respective ministries, and to never feel like we can ever let down our guards, because sin is creeping at the door, and to always be reminded that even though the Lord is happy to use us, it doesn't always mean that He's happy with us. And there's a big difference between the two. Um, the latter is so much more important than the former. Having our hearts happy in Christ is far more important than being used by Christ. And just remembering that and not getting that out of order is really important, because ministry can be an addictive drug, and we have to be careful of those things. And so just wanted to share that, something I've been thinking about, and something that I think we constantly need to be reminded about as ministry leaders, and just because of the temptations that we face on a weekly basis, daily basis.